Well, 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 all of my little goblins. It seems that you were all correct in your theory. Welcome back, everybody. Hello, it is I. It is episode 3 of X-Men 97. I cannot wait to talk to you about this episode. Boy, was there a lot happening in this episode in the best way, and also there were some things that I'm not as big a fan of, to be honest, but we're going to talk about that. So yes, you were all correct. A lot of people had the theory that the person at the door was the real Jean at the end of episode 2, and that Jean, who gave birth to Nathan, was actually the clone, Madelyne Pryor, aka the Goblin Queen, because Maddie is the mother of Nathan, biologically at least, in the comics. And yeah, I had a different theory because I thought that's so predictable, so maybe we'd do something else. But no, we did do the predictable thing. My theory for that one wasn't correct. I'm not giving up on my theory for Krakoa, though. I think we might still see some kind of version of Krakoa, whether that's elements of Krakoa integrated into Genosha, which obviously is now recognized by the United Nations, and I believe the only time we've had a mutant nation that's been recognized by the UN in the comics is Krakoa. Pretty sure, but let me know if there was another time that that happened. I was looking into it, and I was doing some research on Genosha, and I didn't see anything, but maybe I missed something there. So I'm still holding out my hope for some version of Krakoa to show up, or potentially we go to a future and there is a version of Krakoa there. Also, there were a lot of folks in the comments on my episode 1 and 2 review that were telling me about Madelyne Pryor and who she is and how she's the mom of Nathan. So I just thought I would don my Madelyne Pryor cosplay, my Goblin Queen cosplay, which I've had for a few years now. I'm a big fan of Madelyne Pryor. So yes, to all of you that were letting me know who she is, yes, I know who she is. I just had a theory because I thought it would be something that would be fun, that would be different. But yeah, I know who Madelyne Pryor is, guys. I'm actually a big fan of Maddie. Have been for a while. I'm really happy that she's in this show. However, I do have some thoughts about the way this episode went for her in terms of some choices we made for Maddie here. So let's talk about that. I like what we did with Madelyne here in terms of not making her quite as blatantly villainous. It felt like her character had a little bit more depth, and we kind of, well, maybe depth isn't the right word, but it felt like she definitely got a little bit more agency right off the bat. She didn't go like completely psycho. There's also the fact that her resentment towards the X-Men is coming from, I think, a very real place of feeling like she's being now kicked out of a team that, as far as she knows, in her mind, she's been a member of for as long as she can recall. And we also add in the fact that for some of the stuff where she's really going off the wall, like psycho, Sinister is kind of influencing her. So I liked these elements that we had. However, I do feel like we kind of ran through Inferno in this episode. I was kind of hoping with this that Inferno might be a couple episodes long in terms of the story, especially because there are some things that don't quite fit as well because we didn't really get explanations for them. So after Madelyne gets called by Sinister through her baby monitor, and or Jean as she's known then, Jean Clone, I guess we'll call her. The Clone, as Scott likes to call her. Goodness, there were so many reasons for Maddie to be upset at Scott in this episode. Just the fact that when Beast even calls her out as being a clone because of like carbon dating her, which I gotta say, man, Beast getting in some points in this episode. I love when a man carbon dates me. He carbon dates her and she's like, that can't be right. I'm Jean. I've been with you guys this whole time, Scott. And Scott's just like, I was like, Scott, please, this is your wife. This is your wife. This is the mother of your child, for sure. So Scott, but Scott just does not back her up at any point. And I mean, I think that it's so funny how Scott is always a leader, but at the same time, it kind of always feels like Scott's doing like a room temp all the time to be like, guys, where are we all at with this We all thinking clone? You guys are thinking clone? Yeah, all right. Sorry, gotta go clone, honey. So, yeah. And the fact that he calls her the clone, I was like, wow, the clone. Mother of your child, the clone. Oh boy. But yeah, I felt that her ire towards him made a lot of sense. But when Sinister calls her on the baby monitor and he's talking to her and she goes through her sort of evil magical girl transformation and then she takes the name of Goblin Queen. The one thing is it doesn't really make a ton of sense in this version because obviously Goblin Queen comes from the fact that she's making pacts with demons in the original Inferno in the comics. So it was kind of, I mean, she can be the Goblin Queen, that's fine. I just hope that we get some more context for that. And I hope this isn't the last we see of Maddie. And I kind of want some kind of demon element to her just because that is a big part of her character, I think. I mean, I guess it doesn't have to happen. Maybe I would just like for it to happen, but I'd really like for it to happen. And then also when she ends up leaving the X-Men after we resolve this conflict, after speed running through a version of Inferno that feels, I will say, less epic than the comics. I wish it felt a little bit bigger, but we're going to talk about why I think they did this in a little bit because it relates to another point. When Maddie ends up leaving and then, you know, she says to Jean, oh, you know, call me Madelyne Pryor. That also doesn't really make a ton of sense just because Sinister gives her that name because she's a clone. Like, it's related to the fact that she is like Pryor, like she is a clone. That's what the whole name means. So I wasn't as big a fan of Maddie taking the name for herself, and just it didn't make a ton of sense to me. But you know, we gotta tick these boxes, I'm assuming. So that's why we kind of did it the way we did. And I do think that it is related to where the story is headed next as to why we sped through this a little bit. I think with Bishop leaving with baby Nathan, what we're doing is we are speed running a little bit towards Cable. I think the goal is to get Cable in here ASAP, and I think it's also going to be interesting because I believe in the original animated series, I think the origin story of Cable, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think he's supposed to be like a clone of Jean and Scott combined that Mr. Sinister made. So I don't really remember how that was established, but I think that was his backstory. So I'm interested to see if this changes anything for his character, and if so, like what it changes, and if this is the same Cable. I'm assuming it's going to be the same Cable as we had in the classic series, but yeah, I'm just curious to see sort of where that goes and how we unpack that when we get there. I also feel like we are just dropping X-Men like flies right now. First, Storm leaves. Now, Bishop's gone. And I'm just like, man, we're going to need to do some recruiting. It feels like the team is shrinking. But I also feel like that's because, you know, they have such a big cast and they want to make sure every character, I think, gets a focus. So sending people on some of their kind of like solo missions might be a way to manage that, having so many characters in the show. Some things that I did like. So obviously the Madelyne stuff was a little bit iffy for me. I do like her connection to Nathan and Cable and this idea of her just being like a really good mom and not being this mom that ends up wanting to, you know, sacrifice her son, which is what happens in the original Inferno, going like that level of crazy, and then basically kind of abandoning her son in the end. I like that in this regard, she really does try to do what's right for him, and it's, you know, her and Scott together that ultimately decide to send him away for his own good to cure him from the techno-organic virus. I'm also very curious as to who Bishop's friend is. We'll have to see. I mean, in the comics, Nathan ends up going to, I believe, the Ascani. They end up taking him in and curing him. So, yeah, I'm curious to see where we're going to go with that. And also, I feel like when Bishop gets into the future, I don't think it's going to be the same future that Bishop is from, because there's so many things that are changing, and they keep bringing it up of like, did this happen? Do you know about this thing in the future? Magneto leaving the X-Men? And Bishop's like, I don't know about that. That's something that I don't know if that ever happened. And he talks about how like the future is kind of always shifting. So I'm wondering when he travels back, will it be the same? And if not, like what will be changed? will there be a Krakoa? Some things that I really did love in this episode are the animation. I feel like the animation was somehow even better than episode 1 and 2. Wow, it was very trippy. I really loved all of the creepy hallucination sequences, all the illusions that we had in this. Very creepy. I really loved the psychic fight on the astral plane between Jean and Madelyne. That felt so cool, so good. And I loved this idea too of them kind of, while they're fighting, they're also kind of instantly connecting because their memories are the same. So it starts off as a fight, but it quickly kind of becomes, I mean, it's such a Jean thing, you know, kind of coming at it with empathy and wanting to try to help Madelyne, and Madelyne just being so resentful of everything, and this woman who she feels like is taking her life from her, and so lashing out at her. Just the whole way that that was written and done, I think it was done really well. And I loved just the animation, the idea of, you know, going into Jean's mouth being swallowed by her, and the imagery of that in terms of also just like the symbolism of Madelyne feeling like she's being kind of gobbled up. And then this idea of Nathan being the one thing that grounds her and sort of helps her to rise above Sinister's influence, and ultimately, I think a bit, of course, with the help of Jean, shatter that influence and that hold on her, and how Nathan is the one that like gives her strength, like her baby gives her strength. And just getting to see her as a mom in that way was like, something about that just really was really beautiful for me. I feel like Maddie gets robbed of that so much in the comics. There's so much loss that she suffers, and to see her get to shine in that way and really get to be strong as a mom and not feel like, I think she lost her son and that she failed. Seeing her get to make those choices is powerful for me, because I really feel like that's a big wound for her in the comics, just that Madelyne was robbed of the chance to raise her son. And here, at least, she gets to be the one to make the decision to send him away, and gets to do that from a place of wanting to ultimately protect him no matter what, because she loves him so much. I loved seeing that love, man. It really hit me. I mean, I feel like I'm on the verge of tears a little bit talking about it. You know, it's interesting. I feel like Madelyne's costume here is a little bit more evocative of like her Black Queen look that she has when she's with the Hellfire Club. That's what it was giving me more of. And I mean, I still like it. It still has elements of the original costume, but I gotta say, I love this costume a lot. So I was really sad to not see her in the loincloth getup. But you know, they're both good looks. I don't know. It's kind of a combo. It's kind of this look, I think, combined with the Hellfire Club look, which is interesting. It's definitely interesting. That's what I'm gonna say. I'm wondering now if I need to do a version of this, but I also want to do her new costume from the comics where she has her crown and everything. I mean, there's so many. You know what? I'll add it. I feel like I could have many different Madelyne Pryor cosplays and be equally happy in all of them. Although this is definitely one of my favorites to wear, personally. Overall, the fight scenes in this were also great. Not only was the animation amazing in these hallucination sequences, which were fabulous, I also loved how Beast's like scary hallucination or illusion was just having this monster in an elevator that kind of reminded me of like a Spirited Away kind of vibe. And then he just wasn't even really scared by it. He was mostly like intrigued by it. He was like, oh, I think this is you have the wrong floor. Oh, this is interesting. The fight scenes, though, are really great. The fact that when we go down to this illusion of hell, getting to see, you know, Cyclops charge up Bishop in this way, and then Bishop gets super strong and also gets to blast out that energy. It's so cool. I know some people are bothered by the fact that Bishop is using his fists to emit the energy. That doesn't really bother me. I mean, I know he uses his XSE guns as well a lot in the comics, but he can also do that. That's what he does. He takes an energy and then he can expel it, and there's lots of different ways that he can do that. I think one of my favorite ways that I've seen him do that is he was able to use snowfall energy to charge himself at one point. Like the snow was falling, I think, in the comics, and he could charge himself with it. There's just so many cool things I think that we can explore with Bishop. So I really hope that we get to continue along his journey and see more of him in the show, because if he's gone, I'm going to be really sad. But the good news is I don't think he'll be gone, because guess who showed back up again? Storm. And guess who she found? Forge, which I think a lot of us were theorizing that's a path that we could go down, and it turns out that was correct. And oh, I'm so excited for Forge to be in this show. I cannot wait. I wonder if Forge is going to be the one that Bishop goes to in the future, but I can't imagine that Forge would still be alive unless he's mostly cyber in that time. I don't know. He would have to be like a cyborg of some kind, I think. It'll be interesting to see where that all goes. I really love as well that this series is feeling really streamlined. Like, one episode really leads into the next, and it's clear that they're building towards, I think, something really big, where we're going to kind of have like setting up all the pieces, and then at the end everything's going to ramp up really quickly. And those are my favorite kinds of stories, where we spend the first few episodes setting everything up so that later we can get into some really epic moments. And I mean, we've still got a lot of epic moments along the way just setting up the pieces. So I'm so here for it. I also love that this show, this episode, we're ending on one of my favorite notes. A very dramatic mess with Jean and Cyclops left to literally in the wreckage of their room. Also very symbolic, which feels like it's kind of the wreckage of their relationship, because where do we go from here with them? How long was Jean gone for? We don't know. When was she swapped out? We don't know. I feel like it's going to be really interesting seeing us untangle some of this. I feel like every episode we're just adding to the drama pile, and I can't wait for it to all explode. I just really love X-Men drama, so I'm so here for it. Anyways, friends, those are my thoughts on this episode. I think overall, I would probably give this episode a 9 out of 10. It's pretty close to perfect, but there's just a couple things for me with Madelyne that I'm nitpicking, that I personally, yeah, there's some things that I would have loved to see more of. But I think we're going to see more of Maddie. I think she's going to come back. So, you know, it's a tentative 9 out of 10. It might go up to 10 out of 10 once I see later where the story goes. That's the thing with serial storytelling, you know? We're judging the story based on the fact that we don't have all the story yet. So we'll have to see. That's it for this one. I hope you enjoyed. Thank you so much for watching. And until next time, friends, you stay nerdy. And also, if you want to join my Goblin army, please let me know down in the comments. All right, I'm accepting applications. Goodbye.